We take a break from our lightning round mock draft shows to bring you the big one. This is my buckets, the full Dan Besbris ranking sheet. Used to be known as the D-Bombs, the Dan Besbris Old Man Squad, but now it's the buckets. We're going to go bucket 1 through bucket 25 with flyers and everything in between. We're going to go through about 130 players and where I've got them sorted. I'm going to try to do that as fast as humanly possible. Last year, we did it in about an hour and 5 minutes. This year, I intend to try to knock this out in 45 minutes flat. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Dan Besbris at Dan Besbris on Twitter, DanBesbris. Before we get into the proceedings, just a quick reminder to subscribe to Old Man Squad because we're going to be breaking down fantasy basketball, multiple shows a day, all season long. My own shows, Kingy's shows, Noah's shows, Matty G's shows, Dan Palio's shows, Keith's shows. We've got, Eric Ong's shows. I knew I was forgetting somebody. It's going to be an amazing year here at Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. If you appreciate everything that I've done for free, I did open up a $1 Patreon. Check that out if you like it. If not, it doesn't matter. Let's talk fantasy basketball. These are the buckets. This is completely free to all of you guys, not just in this podcast, but over at the Google Sheet that I'm showing on the screen for YouTubers. That link is in the show description. It has all of my ranks from last year. It has this year, basically everything since I started the Old Man Squad Network that I've just put in one place. Again, 100% free. Don't worry, I will be zooming in here in a moment. I'm just trying to figure out where I can put my face on the screen that it won't cover anything up. I don't think that was the answer. Let's go a little farther over. There we go. I think that's actually pretty good. I can zoom in a little bit. We're going to lose some stuff, but it should generally be okay. This is it. These are the Dan Besbris buckets. I'm trying to make it big enough so you guys can see the names, and I'll try to highlight them as we go through so folks can fast forward and rewind based on where we're at. Bucket 1 is Nikola Jokic. That's an easy one. He's, for me, my number 1 all by himself. Bucket 2, Victor Wembanyama and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think you can do fine either way. Wemby, probably an easier head-to-head guy to build around, although you guys know I don't like the guard build. Shai is also extraordinarily easy to build around. Punting threes, for me, tends to be an easier path because I like percentages, and Shai can attack both of them. But either way, you're in great shape. Bucket 3, Luka Doncic and a Giannis punt free throw build. Look, I don't like the punt free throw build, but I'm also man enough to admit that it is a very, very, very good way to start your team in a head-to-head league with Giannis Antetokounmpo. It flips the board. You just have to make sure that, because right out of the gate, if you're punting free throws, you're probably also going to punt threes by all accounts. You don't have to, but like gone are the days where you can just go LeBron in the second and De'Aaron Fox in the third and not punt free threes anymore. You're probably going to end up targeting guys like Amen Thompson, like Zion, later on, like Andrew Wiggins, who's 1.5 to 2 3-pointers a game. So you're probably going to be bad at a couple of things, but you're also going to be very good at rebounds, blocked shots, field goal percent. You're going to have low turnovers, and you have to make sure you get that fifth category, wherever it is, whether it's steals, could be assists in a Giannis team, could be points actually in a Giannis team. If you pick up a bunch of scorers that are bad at foul shooting and you have enough, because you're going to get a bunch of punt free throw big men that dunk the ball late, that your field goal percent is still going to be very, very good. So that's the thing. Like you have to make sure you match up the pieces right and you don't overload with punt free throw big men, or you're going to be really good at 4 things and lose 5-4 every week. Bucket 4 is a combination. This is where we start to get into a few more names per bucket. Anthony Edwards is probably the safest bet there just because he plays an awful lot and he'll be, probably an early second rounder per game, but he's going to play in 75 games, most likely. Again, I say it so flippantly, but he probably will. I like James Harden in this range as well. In head-to-head, if you're punting turnovers, I would go this early on James. I don't think I'd go quite this early in Roto. And that's what some of the little notes are on these names that you're seeing on the screen. James Harden, it has TO in parentheses for turnovers. And those little notations are to help those of you reading the Google Sheet or listening to the show understand where some of the head-to-head Roto splits become. Because Anthony Davis is also in this range, and I have health as the thing in parentheses. And that's not to say that I would go Anthony Davis and Roto here, because I think health is actually still very important in the first, second, and probably third rounds. But if you're not as worried and you think you can sort of work around the games cap, that's a way you could do it. Also, we've seen our good buddy Adam King build an Anthony Davis punt team around his bad health, but this is where he belongs on a per game basis. You just have to have the stones to do it. I generally don't, for whatever that's worth. Bucket 5, Devin Booker, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and Cade Cunningham in an 8-cat format. I like Booker because I think he's going to have a great, well-rounded year. Kevin Durant is here because I think he's going to be a monster on the per-game side, and I can't really handicap for games missed for KD, although, let's be honest, he probably will miss a couple, so maybe I could put, like, a health risk in semi-parentheses. He's like an orange health risk instead of a red grade health risk. And then Steph Curry just belongs in the first round of players. He was going much later than that. He's pushed up to number 13 in most spots now. And so this is where he belongs. These guys all are first rounders. Cade is a first rounder in 8-cat for sure, probably not as much in 9. So again, that's another spot where you have to look at team build, and a guy is probably more valuable in head-to-head than he is in roto. But you guys also know I despise the guard build this year, so I'm probably passing over Cade Cunningham. I'm, by the way, passing over James Harden less because even if you're not punting turnovers, I think James Harden is an early second rounder, where Cade is probably a late second or third, and Trae Young, who's in the next bucket as a turnover parentheses guy, is like, he was like a fourth rounder last year if you weren't punting his poor categories. But that's the beauty of head-to-head. You can draft Trae Young, and he's a pretty easy player to understand your build for because you're just drafting a bunch of volume guys that suck at shooting and some assists on top of what he already brings, and then you've got a guard build. But I'll warn you, the same way I warned you about the Giannis build, if you draft Trae Young, you're going to be good at free throw percent. You're going to be good at assists. You're probably going to be good at three-pointers and maybe scoring. But he's very bad at rebounding, doesn't block any shots. Field goal percent is awful. Turnovers are super high. Steals are fine, but like not blow everybody away. So I don't know. I feel like people draft Trae Young and they're like, oh, I'm great at points, threes, assists, and free throws. But it's really like 2 of those are great and 2 are pretty good. And I would far prefer to start with someone who's pretty good in a bunch of stuff and then figure out how to build around them later, because once you go Trae, you almost have no choice but to target someone like a LaMelo Ball, and yikes. Cat is my other guy in bucket 6 where you don't have to punt anything. I have, and those that are watching again on YouTube, you can see I have numbers underneath these buckets. That's just me counting how many players I've gone through along the way. So Cat basically is in this, 13th effectively, or you could even bump him up to 12th if you didn't want to go the Cade route, but most people do, so I don't expect that to be a thing. Tyrese Maxey, I have alone in bucket 7. He's basically number 15. I have almost nobody ranked by number in my buckets other than Nikola Jokic at 1 and Tyrese Maxey at 15. Everybody else is in a bucket grouped with a bunch of other guys. I just think that he's decidedly worse than Cat, but also markedly better than the guys in bucket 8. And it happens very infrequently. In fact, I think it's the only time. So let's just go to bucket 8. Here's the thing. The reason I don't have Maxey in the late first round like a lot of analysts is that I think his steals come down. That's my big thing there. I think he's going to be more like a mid-second rounder, but a very reliable one. With or without Joel Embiid, he's fine. So that's why I have him here in bucket 7 by himself. Before I get to bucket 8, a reminder to please subscribe. I hope you guys are enjoying this so far. I also mentioned that Patreon first thing. It is important as much as I downplay it, and it is completely optional because if you guys don't have $1, that's also totally fine. It is important to me, and I'm doing the soft sell thing, and it's not a bit necessarily because it's true. I'm going to do everything for free for this season and next season, regardless of what happens with my podcasts or my Patreon. But the faster we get up to that mark where I'm like, oh, cool, I can pay for all of my childcare, then I don't have to worry about it anymore. So yeah, that would be swell if you guys had a moment there. Also, check out fantrax.com/oldmansquad. I know it's probably too late in the game to convince you to switch there right now, but just sign up and then poke around the site. fantrax.com/oldmansquad. See how it looks. We're hosting all of our industry leagues there. Like, it's the place to go if you're an expert. And maybe you'll play there next season. Bucket 8, let's continue. Bucket 8, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Amen Thompson, Jalen Johnson, Domantas Sabonis. I all have in bucket 8. I like them all. So I don't want anybody to be like, oh, Dan, you're down on one of these guys or you're high on one of these guys. They are all, in my opinion, very solid mid-second round selections. I think Donovan Mitchell has a little bit of a bounce back from last year, probably not as good as the seasons where he was right around the turn. Evan Mobley is a pretty reliable, 15 to 25 range guy. Jalen Johnson, I think, is going to be between 12 and 20. You just have a little bit of an injury stuff there. Domantas Sabonis is probably going to be more like a mid to late 20s, possibly even early 30s, but you just like the way the stuff he provides is unusual and a fun pairing in whatever format. And then Amen Thompson is sort of like the golden boy this year, who might be a first rounder if the assists come up and he learns how to shoot it all, or he might be a third rounder. But either way, his stat set is so fun that this is the spot where he needs to come off the board. Bucket 9, Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, and Zion in a punt free throw build. Zion, it makes total sense. He's a second rounder if you're punting free throw. If you're not punting free throw, you probably just shouldn't draft him. Josh Giddey, I think, has first round appeal. I also don't know exactly what his percentages are going to look like this year or his defensive stats. So that's why he's here behind those other much safer second rounders. And then Jalen Williams, I would probably bump up a ledger if it weren't for his wrist thing. It's been pretty nebulous, the reporting on when he's actually going to play full speed in a game. I'm assuming he's going to miss the beginning of the season. I'll take him in the third round. I have him here as kind of like a late second, basically. But if you take anybody that's even remotely risky in the first, I wouldn't take Jalen in the second. And frankly, if you wanted to jump over Jalen Williams, you have my permission right here on the podcast to do so. I forgot to highlight that bucket, but that's what we were just talking about. Now, bucket 10, Jamal Murray, Derek White, and Chet Holmgren. These guys, to me, are all pretty different, but very much in the same realm of what I think they're going to be. I think Jamal Murray is going to be around a top 20 per game guy with a little health risk. Derek White, I think, is going to be a top 25 guy with much less health risk. Chet Holmgren, I think, is probably also in that top 25 range with not, I hope, a ton of health risk. This comes down to what kind of team you're building. My favorite choice in the mix is probably Derek White for the well-roundedness. But I'd probably go Jamal Murray. I'd prefer to take these guys in the third round. There's been a few spots where I did a mock with the first or second pick, and none of the guys I wanted got back to me there. So I went to this range, and sometimes you just kind of have to be okay with that. And when I posted the results, people were like, wow, isn't that early on Jamal Murray, second round? I'm like, well, yeah, but I didn't want, I think he's better. I think he's going to have a better season than Scotty Barnes. So, okay, I know Scotty's pre-ranked ahead of him, but nobody would have said anything if I took Scotty Barnes at 23, but I took Jamal Murray, and everybody was like, isn't that too early? No, maybe. Chet Holmgren is an interesting one because I feel like his stat set you can find cheaper a little bit later, but there's only 2 other spots you could do it. So you get it or you don't, and don't worry too much about it. Bucket 11, Pascal Siakam, Bam Adebayo, Austin Reeves, and Scotty Barnes. These are guys all I think are going to be close to top 30. Siakam has the shutdown risk if the Pacers stink. Adebayo is probably more like a top 40 per game guy, but he gets the health bump. Austin Reeves, you guys know I'm really high on, and all my mock drafts have been against people that read my stuff. So he's going super early, and I'm never getting him. We got a mid-show visit from a child. That's fine. What we were talking about here, Scotty Barnes, Austin Reeves, I'm very high on, but I'm never getting him because I keep drafting against people that read my stuff. And then I think Barnes has a bounce back year. I was really hoping we'd get a discounted price on him, but we kind of didn't. So it is what it is. I probably won't get him anywhere, and I have to just sort of come to terms with that. Bucket 12, LaMelo Ball, if you're willing to brave the health risk. I'm not. Trey Murphy III, who I think is just going to be a really good top 35 kind of play. Same with Jaren Jackson Jr. He belongs in this range. And then Kawhi Leonard, who's going later than this. You'll notice I have him earlier than consensus. I'm going to go through this bucket at some point and color code guys based on where I am versus consensus. I think that's not helpful for you guys, but it's interesting for me to know, who was I up or down on. But I think this is the spot for Kawhi. And it's the reason I didn't put him in red or orange or blue or anything. I know we're dealing with the rest stuff, but I think by totals, he's going to be in the 30s or better this year. That's basically what I'm predicting with this bucket. Bucket 13 is kind of our first more full bucket. We've got 7 names in this one. De'Aaron Fox, who starts the year hurt. LeBron, who starts the year hurt. Alperen Şengün in a punt free throw build. Jalen Brunson, Franz Wagner, Denny Avdia, Cooper Flagg. This equates roughly to the guys between 35 and 40, give or take. I think we're now 41 names into the list if my actual counting was right on the screen. And that's because I think Jalen Brunson, Franz are going to be pretty safe in this range. I think Avdia, this is where he should go. He has the big upside, but there's a little bit of downside. I think I put Cooper Flag here because I think this is where he should be going. I didn't think that went through a lot, actually. The more I stare at Cooper Flag, I'm thinking, like, maybe you could go a little earlier on him if you wanted, but it is what it is. And then LeBron, this is where you take him if you're okay with a stash to start the year. I'm not. De'Aaron Fox, this is where you take him if you're okay to stash him, but it's probably more like a 10-day stash instead of a month. So Fox, I think, is the one I'd be more inclined to look at here at bucket 13. LeBron, I'm probably dodging altogether, but he's an 8-cat monster once he gets going. So, again, you get him in the 4th round, and he's going to be a first-rounder. An 8-cat, fine. 9-cat, I don't think I'm drafting LeBron basically anywhere. Bucket 14 has 6 names: Desmond Bane, Jaylen Brown, Dyson Daniels, Jimmy Butler, Miles Turner, and Ivica Zubac. I don't know what I need to add to this one. I think Bane is just a very safe mid-40s guy. Jaylen Brown is... we're obviously hoping the percentages come back, and he's dealing with a little tightness, a little soreness leading into the season. He might even miss opening night. So that's a downer. But look, I'm way lower on him than consensus anyway, so odds are you're not going to get him. Dyson Daniels, this is where he belongs. That's fine. Jimmy Butler, same kind of thing. Per game upside with a little bit of health risk. Miles Turner is probably going to be a top 45 guy. Ivica Zubac, I know there's a lot of down arrows on Zoo, and I'm a part of them. But second half last year, he was a second rounder. And even if Brook Lopez takes like 3 or 4 of his minutes away, I still think that Zoo can be a top 50 guy. So I'm totally fine with him here. Bucket 15 is a short one, just 3 names in that. Jalen Duren, who I think is going to be around a top 50 guy. Kobe White, I think is going to be around top 50. John Morant, an 8-cat, I think is going to be around top 50. He's a guy you should take here. This is where he's going in a lot of drafts. And basically, this is my way of saying probably wouldn't draft him in 9-cat, but I probably would draft him here in 8-cat. Bucket 16, we're flying along, guys. We're 50 names into this thing. We can do this in 45 minutes. I'm sure of it. This tends to be a spot where a lot of people consider taking a health risk guy. Kristaps Porzingis is going in this range. Joel Embiid is going in this range. I'm generally fine with that decision making. I'm probably not going to do it, by the way. Like, the reason I'm more into Kawhi Leonard is that it's scheduled rest as opposed to guys that are just hurt all the time. For some reason, I'm more okay with the scheduled rest. The other names in bucket 16 that I think should be going in this same area: Brandon Miller is probably going to be like a top 60 guy. Zach LaVine, same thing. Jared Allen, same thing. Very safe. I have no deep thoughts to add to these guys, so let's keep moving along. Bucket 17, all by itself: DeAndre Ayton, OG Anunoby. Just 2 names in this one. Weird, I know, but they kind of fell between the safety of the Zach LaVine, Jared Allen range and then starting to get into guys that have a little bit more flex on what their final numbers are going to look like. And I think we know what DeAndre Ayton's going to be this year. He's going to be an amazing fit with Luka and LeBron. He's going to be a double-double guy with good percentages. And it's very hard for someone like that to be worse than a top 60 play. And OG Anunoby, who's going about a round later than where I've got him in the bucket, but I think he'll be a top 60 range guy as well. And he gets his steals and blocks regardless of role shifting and what have you. Remember, guys, you can access this Google Sheet for free in the show description, just in case you want to go back and look at any of this stuff. Bucket 18, Peyton Pritchard, Rudy Gobert, and an injured Darius Garland. I think Pritchard's going to be a top 60 guy. I think Rudy Gobert bounces back up just a tiny bit this year. I think the block rate is a little bit better. Rebound rate, I hope, gets a little bit better, but I can't bank on that. And then Garland, who's a top 50 point guard. Those guys are just hard to find, and you'd have to take the plunge and hope that he's healthy quickly. But it seems like he's not going to be out all that long. I don't know. If you can dodge the IL guys, I probably would through the first 9 or 10 rounds. Just get guys that are healthy on opening night. But I also understand, and so that's why this is where Garland belongs. Bucket 19. Vooch is in bucket 19. I'm strongly considering moving him down, but that's not really fair because per game, he'll be better than this as long as he's on the Chicago Bulls. And I got to be honest with you guys, I don't know that that's going to be the entire year. So I'm basically just trying to tell you that I'm a little down on Vooch this season. I am concerned about where he ends up as the season moves along. And for that reason, I just wouldn't recommend drafting him. So how do I do that? I put him in a lower bucket than where he's going in most drafts. If he happens to fall, 10 to 15 slots later than his ADP, then fine, you can go ahead and grab him. Same story with Walker Kessler, who I'm softening my tank stance on a little bit. And I'd rather go Kessler when he's a perfect fit in a particular punt build, like a big man build or a defensive stats build or whatever. But it's also possible that Utah is so bad that they don't have to rest their guys as much. Still, there are plenty of names on the board if you want to avoid the tank guy, which I probably will do. Jakob Poeltl I'm high on Poeltl. He's typically going about 10 slots later than this. I moved him up about 2 buckets because I think you can target him here if you want. He's a strong center. He doesn't have the risk that these other guys do. I also have Cam Johnson up here. I know he's pre-ranked in the 90s. I think he's going to be top 65 in 9-cat this year, and I have no shame about saying it. I'm also aware that he's more of a 9-cat darling, so 8-cat, you probably don't take him this high. And then DeMar DeRozan, who for some reason is going in the mid-50s. I posted a mock draft result. One of the shows that we did probably has the information on this. I ended up with DeMar at like pick 69 or 70, which is totally fine. That's where he should be going, not 55. If he falls here, which he might in some drafts, that's when you scoop him up. Bucket 20. Finally, we get to Paolo Banchero. I don't know where the hell to put Paolo because in straight 9-cat, you just can't draft him in straight 9-cat. Just don't do it. If you're punting turnovers and free throws, he has a chance to be like a top 60, top 70 guy. So that's what I put him here. And I guess maybe I should probably put in parentheses like turnovers, free throws together. But also, like, color code him something weird. Just don't do it. Okay? He's a good basketball player, but he's a bad fantasy player in category leagues. Brandon Ingram I have here as well. I'm lower on consensus on Brandon because I'm afraid of injury stuff. Lauri Markkanen, this is a similar phenomenon to the DeMar DeRozan thing. Like, some guys just fall even though their pre-rank is higher. And Markkanen got to me, I think it's 72 in a league. And at that point, you got to take him. That's where I have him here. He's pre-ranked like 50-something, I think. I forget exactly what it is, but he just kept falling and falling and falling. And finally, everybody else was off my board, and they got to me and I was looking at guys in bucket 20 and 21, and the choice was Markkanen or Donovan Clingan or Asar Thompson. I went Markkanen. I don't know if it's because I didn't need the other stuff or like the thing, again, like with Utah, you've got the rest stuff, but when Lowry's right, he can be top 20. It's crazy to get a top 20 guy in the 70 range just because of shutdown risk. Usually the shutdown risk thing knocks a guy like 1-2 rounds, but not 4. So that's why I went that direction. But of course, if he wasn't there, Donovan Clingan was the next guy I was going to reach for. Asar Thompson, only a baby size reach now at, pick late 60s range because he's going early 70s in most drafts now. I told you about Fantrax. I told you about FanDuel. Did I say this show was brought to you by FanDuel at the outset? I might have forgotten to do that. So we're going to do it twice right in a row right now. You guys want to know what Utah's regular season win total is? It's 19.5. See, now here's the thing. I don't think they're going to be trying to lose games this year the way they have in the past. I think they're just going to lose them by accident. So I might look at the over. I think they could get to 20. 20 is pretty low. That, of course, is over with our buddies at FanDuel and the FanDuel Sportsbook, the FanDuel Sportsbook app, all of those amazing places. Thank you to FanDuel and Believe Network for being our proud presenting sponsors here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, where I'll once again remind you guys, before we get into the next bucket, I am Dan Besbris on Twitter. Please follow me over there. We're going to be doing so much stuff, including, and I'll actually, you know what? I'll throw it up on the screen right now. Let's make it nice and big for you guys to see it. Injury replacement board. I already got Grayson Allen on there, but this is going to populate as the season goes. This is where I'm going to put guys that I think are great pickups to get you huge per game numbers when an injured guy is out. That's going to be something we have during the season. We have the streaming calendar. This is available also completely for free in the Google Sheet. I will be talking about all of these things on my podcast. I'll be recapping every night of action on the podcast. There are so many reasons to follow me on Twitter and to follow these shows. So please subscribe. Find me on social at Dan Besbris. I do a nightly breakdown where I tell you everything that happened in the NBA on Twitter, like within a half an hour of the game's ending. There are other people that do that, but I'll tell you what, I did it first, and I think I do it better, but that's me being an arrogant prick. So whatever. Let's get back into some of the stuff here. And thank you again to everybody that's dropped $1 into the tip jar. That is actually more flattering than you realize, and it's like a 99 cents that you probably don't even think about. Bucket 21, as we move into the mid-70s, Isaiah Hartenstein. This is exactly where he belongs. Christian Brown, who I have like maybe 5-ish slots ahead of ADP right now. Andrew Nembhard. Draymond Green, but only if you're punting points. If you're not in a punt points team, I think you just let him go. John Collins, I'm high on John Collins. I think he's going to have just like a magically efficient year with the Clippers. He's a perfect fit out there. He's going around 90, but I would happily take him around ahead of that. Mark Williams, I can't wrap my head around, and I keep moving him down. He was in bucket 20 for me before, and then we found out that he's not going to be ready to start the year. I'm strongly considering moving him down into bucket 22 and just trying not to do the Mark Williams thing right now. In fact, you guys can watch me do it live on air. Da 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 da. We got to change the numbers here. Yeah, Mark Williams, bye-bye. I'd rather go on Onyeka Okongwu here around 75, which I think is where he finishes this year. I don't think it's a big upside play there unless Porzingis misses, 35 games or more. If Porzingis misses 20 games, then this is where Okongwu belongs. Bucket 22. This is now we're into like the early 80s, basically. Emmanuel Quickley, who I'm pretty low on. Jordan Poole, I'm a little bit low on. He'll probably get out to a hot start because no DeJounte Murray. But I do think Murray comes back at some point, and so you kind of have to be ready for Poole to turn into a Poole pumpkin at that point. This is where I'd be comfortable drafting Tyler Hero, who I think is going to miss the first 2 to 4 weeks of the season, but then is going to be like a top 40 guy once he comes back. Michael Porter Jr., I'm comfortable taking here outside the top 80. There is colossal tank risk, but he's going to go huge numbers until the shutdown. Toumani Camara, you may notice I have very high. I don't think that means you need to take him at 80-ish, late 70s, early 80s. But also, I think it's where he finishes. So, like, if it gets to you at 93 and you don't know what to do, because that's what I've been happening to me lately, all my favorites are off the board, and I have picked, like, 97, just go Kamara. Miles Bridges, I'll never end up with him. I think he's going to be more like a 75-80 range guy, and everybody's drafting him at 50. But if he has a super efficient year with LaMelo, then I'll eat my hat, and I'll eat my words, and that's fine. Sometimes we miss. I have Josh Hart here in the 80s. His ADP is falling fast. His pre-rank is outside the top 100. If he gets to that range, you take him. If he doesn't, you don't. Simple. And then we've got 2 punt field goal guys in here. So this is where if you are building the guard team, you can go Anthony Simons or Cam Thomas. This is the range for those guys if you feel so inclined. I keep checking the time, and I think we're going to make it. But there's a lot of discussion left. We're getting into the part where I think you probably need more explanation. Bucket 23 takes us, this is another like 10-person bucket, basically. This takes us into the 85 to 95 range, roughly. This is where I would be comfortable taking Paul George, despite the health risk. I'm probably not going to draft Paul George in a head-to-head league because I think it's going to be a lot of a pain in the neck kind of stuff. I have on good authority that PG was initially trying to come back when the Sixers played in his hometown, so Southern California. I don't know that that's going to happen anymore. Those games were, I think, where was that? I think oh, no, it wasn't when they were playing in there. It was going to be playing against his former team. I got that right now. November 17th is when the Clippers played the 76ers. It sounds like they might push it back a little farther than that, because with the NBA Cup, the games are kind of spread out, so you don't miss that much. So it seems like he's probably a little more than a month away from playing in a basketball game, but that's still better than I think a lot of us thought. But that's a hard guy to draft. PG's a hard guy to draft. Julius Randle I have in this range. I'm lower than consensus, so you probably won't get him. I have Norman Powell down here, and at the same time, I don't think you should bother with Norm because I don't know if he's going to be good when Tyler Hero comes back. And if Tyler's back in 2 weeks, then it's going to be a wasted pick. So probably don't go Norm. And I might move him around actually. Or maybe make a nomenclature here that's, I'm going to write the word burger next to Nora's name. That was a weird one, but I'm putting it there. Modest Bazelis here. I think he's being overdrafted a little bit. I like Bazelis. I liked him a lot when he was going at like 110. I don't like him so much going at 75 or 80 anymore. I would take him more at 85 to 90, and he probably won't get there. Mikal Bridges, this is where he goes. Very safe pick in this range. Nick Claxton, I would only go here if you're comfortable with the tank, so probably skip him. If you're considering a bad free throw shooting center, might I interest you in a Derek Lively instead? Lively and Claxton have almost the exact same fantasy game, and Lively, his issue is that he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but he's on a team that's trying to win and has Claxton-like upside if he actually plays 26, 27 minutes a ball game. So go Lively here instead if you need the center. If you don't need those stats, go DiVincenzo. I think he's going to be a top 100 guy this year. Go Bobby Portis. I think he's going to be a top 100 guy. Santi Aldama, I'm souring on a little bit. I had him 2 buckets earlier, but JJJ coming back before the end of the preseason and Aldama not really getting a chance to start and go big has me worried that the Grizzlies just don't like him anymore. Because it seemed like he had all the opportunity in the universe, and they're just still not even really considering it, which is kind of what we saw last year, that it didn't seem like they liked Aldama all that much, and he was pissing people off. But I thought, new year, fresh new year, new you, and maybe not. So Aldama is hanging on by a thread for me in this range. If you're looking at this and you're watching this show and you're like, Dan, who's at jeopardy of falling farther down? Norman Powell and Santi Aldama, who I might move as just like I'm afraid he might just total bust now. I really didn't like what I saw in the preseason. Most of the stuff you just kind of write it off, but and I would move him down multiple spots here. Although the next group is so gigantic, I don't know that I'd have the opportunity to. In fact, you know what? Let's do this. We're gonna move Santi Aldama down right before your very eyes as well. And that's the thing. Like, no matter how much work I do on this thing, I'm always tweaking it. So Aldama moves down a bucket, which is the big one. This is the big bucket. Bucket 24 and flyer tier 1. And it's hard for me to display on YouTube because I can't zoom in any farther. Whoopsies. You're just going to have to be okay with the fact that this is what it looks like. I mean, if I zoom in more and move over here, you're not going to be able to see the entire bucket on the screen. So I think I liked it better what I was doing last time. In fact, we can even zoom out a little. There, that's actually even easier. So there are a lot of names in this bucket. There are 15 of them. And I actually put them in order until I just threw Aldama in there at the end. Let's retool this. Aldama, you will be... Let's move him over here. We're going to move Beal, Edey, and Jalen Green down, and then we're going to move Aldama back up above those guys. There we go. Now it's back in order again. Okay, so you've gotten through bucket 23. The draft comes to you. It's somewhere around pick 94, 95, and you don't know what to do. The reason that this area is hard and the reason that I wanted to get to this part in about a half an hour is that I knew this particular bucket was going to be the one where we spent a few minutes. And the reason we're spending a few minutes on this bucket, as I remind you again to subscribe to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball and follow me on Twitter, is you are trying to figure out not only who you like the best, but who has the best chance of getting back to you coming back around. More so than in the other parts of the draft, where like, unless you're near a turn, you just accept that the other guys you like are not getting back to you. Okay? If you have like pick 10, that's a thing you have to think about. 11, you think about it a little bit. Or if you're near the front end, pick 2, pick 3, coming back around, you think about it some. But if you're at like pick 6, 7, you just assume the guys you like are not getting back to you. If they do, amazing. That's massive stroke of luck. But late in the draft, when everybody's just drafting everybody completely out of order, and it's happening this year by around pick 80, but it really starts to happen at pick 90, 95. That's when you need to know, who does Dan like, but also who does Dan think I can get if I squatted on it a little bit? So that's what bucket 24 and flyer tier 1 is. It's a combination of guys that I think are a safe bucket 24, which would be guys that I think are going to be a safe top 100 kind of dude, or a little better, and flyer types that I think could really pop off and go a bit bigger. So Benedict Mathurin, first name in this group. He's like kind of a combination between the two. I think he does have a pretty safe floor because he's going to score a ton this year. But the big question on Benedict is, do any of his other stats improve season over season? And I don't know that they will. If they do, that's how he kind of moves into that like big leapers group. If they don't, that's how he settles into the bucket. Brandon Podziemski had, I got to move him around too. He had kind of a whack preseason, so I got to slide him down here. Yeah, let's move him. I'm going to put Pods. We're going to slide Pods down here. Brandon, oops, missed the D. Podziemski. Okay. Khalil Ware is the next name on the list. I'm a little worried about the fact that they didn't want to play he and Adebayo together through a lot of the preseason, but when Jovic sat out, Ware started at center and went big. So I think it's going to happen at least some. And once you get into this range, you got to take he's a huge upside play. You must. Tara Eason is the next name on my board here. He's going around pick 100, and he's probably going to be a top 75 per game guy. The resting on back-to-backs is a little upsetting. I think the hope is that he can kind of grow out of that as the season goes, but your target on games played should be about 66 for him, and that's the reason to be maybe a little bit lower. Devin Vassell is the next one. He's mostly here because I don't think he would get back to you with your next pick. He's not my favorite in this group because I think he's just going to be like a top 100 kind of guy, but you take him earlier because someone like a Herb Jones, who I also think is going to be around top 100, will probably be there, 9 to 12 picks later, and Vassell won't. Andrew Wiggins, I have next in order in this one. I think people are too low on Wiggins. His rank with Miami was quite good the final 2 months last year. And anybody that's looking at it like, I don't know, he's like number 109 cat, was not aware that the reason he was that low was because he was unseasonably bad at turning the ball over. And I don't think that's a thing that sticks. His 8 cat rank with the Heat was top 70 range. He was like 20 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. He was great. He was a 1-1-2 guy with 2 3-pointers. Percentages were not great, but they never are for him. And Hero's going to be out for a little bit. Like, I think Wiggins can be good even when Hero's in there. And yeah, he'll be fighting it out with Norman Powell a bit as well. But like, I actually think Wiggins is going to be involved a bit in Miami. I think he'll be better than people realize. Naz Reid is the next one. He is very much just a top 100 chunker. There's nothing to add there. Once those guys are off the board, then I'm comfortable with Keegan. So my thing on Keegan is usually you can get him in the 11th round. And so maybe I didn't need to put him here, but I did want to talk about him at the very least. I think Keegan Murray's back 2 to 2.5 weeks into the season. So I'm hoping only misses about 10 ball games. Once he does come back, I think he's a top 75 guy. So again, this is one of those spots where like, is 2 weeks of stash worth a 2.5 round jump? I think the answer is yes. I think he's going to have a great season. I'm not worried about whatever you think a logjam might be in Sacramento because he's the full-time power forward there. All those other guys are not coming for his stuff. Zach LaVine's not coming for his stuff. DeRozan's not coming for his. Those guys are fighting it out for ball handling nonsense at the 2 and the 3 spot. And the big logjam is down in the guard range. Keegan's the guy, man. They just gave him a ton of money to be the guy. He's one of the only dudes on that team that can play defense. If he shoots the 3 ball well, he could even be better. I think he's going to have an amazing season. And I normally hate to take guys that are hurt to start the year, but it's not a leg thing. So I don't think it's a lingering deal. He's a fast healer. I think he'll be back by like November 5th ish, maybe a little after that, maybe like November 8th, 9th, something like that. That's pretty early. Herb Jones is the next one on the list. I think he's a very reliable top 100 3-and-D kind of guy. So solid place to get him here just outside the top 100. Drew Holiday was a guy that I was really crowing about at the beginning of draft season when he was getting drafted at like 145. Then he jumped up to 80, and everybody was like, oh, right, Drew Holiday, we forgot. And now he's around 100, which is where he belonged, but all my fun is gone because he's not young enough to play 82 ball games. He's going to have a really awesome, diverse stat set. He's a guy that I would very much target here in Roto and less so in head-to-head, and that's why he's lower in this order. My kid's having a blast in the other room. That's why he's lower on this list of 24 flyer types, bucket 24 flyer types, because in head-to-head, the missed games I think are going to be annoying, and then Scoot Henderson might mess him up anyway. But Roto, you just bank what he's doing. Now we'll get back around to Pajemski, who has not looked good in the preseason. I'm still hopeful that he can kind of turn it on once the season goes, but Steve Kerr is always going to mix and match, and they're going to try to show off Jonathan Kuminga before they trade him. So it might be a weird beginning of the season again. But if all these other guys are off the board, you got to go Pods, because if the upside hits, he's much more interesting than most of these names. Jalen Suggs, I have behind him. He's a safer guy, but he's also hurt all the time. So I don't like guys that are hurt all the time. You guys watched me drop Santi Aldama a bunch of spots in real time on today's episode. This is where he ended up. I'd rather go Aldama like near 110 as opposed to 95 where I was going before. Bradley Beal, same thing. He's going to be hurt. He'll probably be a top 90 guy for LA, but too much injury risk. And then you get into a couple of stash types. Zach Edey, who I think is going to be really good once he's done being hurt, but it might take him 4 or 5 weeks to get back. That's scary. So probably don't do that unless you have 3 IL slots. And that's a little different than like the Garland, De'Aaron Fox, Keegan Murray thoughts, because I think those guys are all targeting coming back like 2 weeks into the season. So Edey, you need to have a little bit more space. And then Jalen Green, who, like, look, let's be honest, in a punt field goal build, he's going to be awesome this year, but he's also hurt. It's a soft tissue nagging thing. I would try to avoid that if at all possible. We're going to move through the rest of this stuff very fast. Again, I was gunning for 45 minutes, and we're getting close to that. But also, I want to spend most of the time that's left just telling you why I organized things the way I did. Bucket 25 comes after Flyer Tier 1, because these are guys that I think are like top 115 guys that are extremely boring, but your team might need them. And that's Tobias Harris, Jaden McDaniels. Those are like the poster boys for that. Alex Sarr, I think, is in that range, although you could call him a flyer, but he's getting drafted ahead of that. So I put him down here mostly so that you wouldn't do it. And then D'Angelo Russell for part of a season. I don't really like him either. But I also think that I would probably go Tobias Harris over my Flyer Tier 2 guys, because a lot of my head-to-head teams, sometimes you need a guy that's just top 110 and plays every day. Not everybody can be a flyer all the time. We want a gun for upside, but if you took any risks at all earlier in your draft, getting your 11th round pick to be a guy that you can just rely on from start to finish is useful. Now, if you had an extremely safe draft with a lot of like quiet, healthy winners, jump right over bucket 25. That's what you do here. And you get into Flyers 2, 3, and 4. Flyer Tier 2, these are the Flyers that I still like a lot. Okay? They didn't quite make the like, the Flyer Tier 1 is like the safe Flyers. Flyer Tier 2, I don't know, is quite as safe. But Tier 2 are still guys I like a lot. They're not in any particular order, this one. The only one I did in order was that Bucket 24 Flyer Tier 1. Flyer Tier 2, Kevin Porter Jr., if you wanted me to tell you it in a rough order, KPJ would be probably the first one there. Then I would probably go Cason Wallace, Aaron Nesmith, Isaiah Jackson, Nemish Keita, Reed Shepard, and then Cam Whitmore. That would be the 7 Tier 2 Flyers in order. Flyer Tier 3, if we get this far, I don't even think I could put these in order, but the names are Sam Hauser, Al Horford for games cap, Adem Bona for Joel Embiid missing any games. Don't do it, by the way, if Embiid is actually starting the year. Nikola Jokic, he's an interesting one. He probably would be my most interesting Flyer Tier 3. Davion Mitchell, which is more of a burger play. Quentin Grimes, who looks like he might be the beneficiary of the Sixers being healthy, and he can just go 3-and-D mode. And Keyshawn George, who, I mean, that's the definition of a flyer. His percentages might be awful, or maybe he gets better. But again, once you get to this range, you're probably into pick 125, 135. So whatever you do is probably going to end up getting dropped regardless. And then Flyer Tier 4, Taylor Hendricks is probably the most interesting guy there. The other names in that one, Daniel Gafford, if you think that he might get half the playing time, or maybe you just rely on him when Derek Lively gets hurt, inevitably. PJ Washington, Kyle Filipowski, Isaiah Collier, Jay Huff, Alex Caruso, and Kelly Oubre Jr. And then all the other names that you see on your board, if you're watching, are names that were in the Yahoo pre-ranks that I skipped over because I didn't think they belonged on my main list. If you're into sitting on rookies, Ace Bailey's over there, VJ Edgecombe is over there, Dylan Harper is over there. I just, You know, those guys are going to have big games and then terrible ones, and they're going to get added and dropped and so on and so forth. But yeah, you'll also notice that I don't have Shaden Sharp, CJ McCollum, or RJ Barrett in any of the buckets. It's because those guys are points league plays for me only. I just don't think that they're 9-cat guys. I think they are points league guys, and like Sharp in particular is going to be a really good points league guy, but he's one of those big gap players between formats, and the stuff that I'm talking about right now is 9-cat. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the buckets board. We got through all of it in 45 minutes. I am stoked about that. Didn't take us 65 this year, so you can get back to your day. Please subscribe. That's what I'm asking of you. Again, Patreon is $1 if you feel so inclined. Honestly, if you'd like, you can see how things go. I don't need your dollar. I'd like it, but I don't need it. We're just trying to get to the point where I can pay for all my childcare and then do everything for free for the rest of my life, because this is freaking fun, and I'm really close. We are really close. Between how many of you are watching the shows, I'm noticing my backdrop is a little bit off kilter this morning. I think it's because the dog jumped into it and broke one of them. And if that's the end of my backdrop, I'm going to be very upset. Like, this one is leaning on me. Well, I'm at Dan Vespers on Twitter. Follow me over there. Find our buddies at FanDuel, fantrax.com/oldmansquad, patreon.com/oldmansquad, the HOF app with promo code SQUAD. Forgot to tell you guys about that earlier in the show. The Believe Network, and all of you. This is kind of the end of fantasy draft season. I hope all this stuff was extremely helpful. Again, all the links you need are in the show description. I'll leave them there all season long, so you can enjoy the free Google Sheet and all the things we do there. So much stuff on social media. Thank you for an amazing run-up to the season. We grew the YouTube page by about another 2,000 subscribers. Let's just keep on going. We did 7,000 last year in the season. Let's do another 7 this year. Why not, right? Why not? You guys are awesome. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Let's transition from pre to in-season fantasy basketball. I'm Dan for the Old Man Squad, and I'll see you guys real soon.